welcome to Completely Booked. We recorded this podcast before we knew the library would be closed indefinitely due to the coronavirus. So we talk about an event, DCAZ, the Duval Comic and Zine Festival, that was set to occur March 28th. Unfortunately, the event has been postponed. That being said, please enjoy the rest of the podcast.
And the library offers so much for people that have nothing. If you don't have the internet at home, if you don't have materials, the library here provides it for you. So I wanted to be a part of that, and I wanted DCAZ to be a part of that, to bring that to the community.
That was Lindsey Anderson, one of our guests today on Completely Booked. I'm Gabby.
And I'm Amanda. Dawn Wailey and Lindsey Anderson are two local zine makers that join us today to talk about DCAZ, the first ever Duval Comics and Zine Fest. It's taking place at the main library downtown on March 28th from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m.
DCAZ is designed for people to talk, create, and hang with folks who are passionate about independent publishing. If you've never made a zine or comic but have an interest in it, they want to meet you too. Enjoy a day of vendor tables featuring independent creators, creator presentations, and zine-making workshops.
Dawn and Lindsey also host zine and comic making workshops every Monday night at Rain Dogs and 5 Points, so you can meet them and get a little practice in before the big fest.
So without further ado, here is our interview with Dawn and Lindsey.
Well, welcome Lindsey and Dan. We are so excited to have you here on Completely Booked.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
So why don't you guys start out by telling us a little bit about yourselves?
My name is Lindsey Anderson, and I'm a zine maker here in Jacksonville, Florida. I've been making my own zine called River City Ranch for about the past 7 years, and that has led me into meeting with other zine makers, seeing the need in Jacksonville and the interest to build zine making materials and have workshops and meet other zine makers who feel the same way. And that is my background, and that's how I got involved with Dan here with DCAZ.
My name is Dan. I really have been enjoying making zines and comics for the past few years. I've been attending national zine festivals and really enjoyed the community that it's brought. And then being able to hear from other people and their voices and their different stories and backgrounds outside of like mainstream media has been kind of a powerful connection with all of them. So that's why I'm really interested in it. So I came to Jacksonville to partner with Lindsey on creating our first Zine Fest here for self-publishers. It's really important to me and something I'm passionate about.
Very cool. So what exactly is DCAZ?
Duval Comics and Zine Festival. It's mostly just a celebration of self-publishers. We want to uplift the voices in our community. Jacksonville Library happens to have the largest zine collection in the Southeast, so we thought that this would be a great place to hold the festival and organize it. So, yeah.
And so will DCAZ be just Jacksonville zine and comic book makers, or all over the world?
Right now, I believe it's mostly regional applicants that we have. I know we have some people coming in from North Carolina, Gainesville, probably Georgia. But I mean, if people want to apply from internationally and nationally, then they're more than welcome. Yes.
And what can our listeners expect at DCAZ?
Well, for the Zine Fest for DCAZ, it's a free event, and it's going to take place from noon to 4 on Saturday, March the 28th. It's all ages, and you can expect tables of self-publishers. They're either make comics or zines, and you can wander through and discover what people are making on their own, what they're publishing. You can talk to them about where they started from, or if you're interested to just pick them up and buy them and start a collection of your own, meet like-minded people, attend workshops, explore the library. It's a beautiful library downtown, so there's a lot for people who are just discovering self-publishing or have been involved.
We're really hoping to get people people involved in wanting to self-publish also. So a lot of the workshops are going to be geared toward bookbinding, printing, how to make a zine. And then also I know we're going to have a panel of different self-publishers as well, just talking about how they got their start and what got them interested in it. So hopefully we're hoping to increase a passion and drive towards self-publishing and doing the same thing we do. Yeah.
Yeah, we're so excited that it's at the library. How did that relationship come about?
I have been working with the library for the last few years. I've been a zine maker, and the people who were managing the zine catalog here got wind of my zine and asked me to submit my zines there. Then they tapped into me to try to work more with the library to give more visual, put the zine catalog into more of the mainstream. So they asked me to come give speeches, come to the book fair. You guys do a book fest, annual book fest. So I came and gave a speech here with another self-publisher, did some workshops for Art Walk. And so I already had a connection and a relationship with the library. And I was enamored really with the space that you guys have with Makerspace and the resources that are available. That's very close to my heart, especially with zine making. I wanted to make it like more upfront with the accessibility of zine making. Doesn't matter how much money or experience you have. I have none of that. I had none when I started zine making. And the library offers so much for people that have nothing. If you don't have the internet at home, if you don't have materials, the library here provides it for you. So I wanted to be a part of that, and I wanted DCAZ to be a part of that, to bring that to the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm really excited for anybody to come to the Zine Festival,
Thank
even
you
if
guys
they're
so
not
much for tuning in
tabling, to come and be able to
We hope you enjoyed hearing
catalog
Dawn
it with
and
the
Lindsey's
library
stories
and then tell
and are
others
as
to
excited
say,
as we
hey,
are to
come down
attend
to the
DCAZ.
downtown library,
Be
check
sure to
out
mark
my
your calendar
zine.
for March
I just think there's
28th
something like
from
really
12
fun
p.m.
and
to 4
interesting
p.m.
about that. And they'll be
And
like,
come hang out
hey,
at the
this
main
thing that I
library
made,
to
it's there
mingle
at the
with
library. You
fellow
can check
comic
it
and
out. And
zine
by the way,
creators.
there's a lot
To
of
find out
comics and
more
other
about
resources
DCAZ
and books that
about
you should
Dawn and
check out
Lindsey's
too. But
workshops,
yeah,
you
I'm
can
really
find them
excited
on
about that.
Facebook
And
by
it's just
searching
like kind of the perfect
DCAZ.
all ages
We'll be sure to
venue.
link to the event page on our website at jacksonpubliclibrary.org.
Definitely. And as
And why
always,
do you
be sure to
think that
follow us on
DCAZ is so
Facebook,
important
Instagram,
for
and
Jax
Twitter at
creators?
Jax Library for
I think that
updates
it's
on
very
future podcasts and all library
empowering.
happenings.
Until next
It's
time, I'm
important
Amanda.
to
And I'm Gabby.
show people
Bye, guys.
what you've created and how you've created it. And they might not follow you in the same steps, but I think it's very important that it inspires them from any class, any walk of life, any background, any experience, that what you have to say is interesting to some people. Even if it's just to you, you make connections that you never expect. Just putting yourself out there and using resources are available to you. So, that's, like I said, it's very dear to my heart, the resources and everything that's going to be available through the library and through DCAZ. And, so we work endlessly to make sure that that's available to people.
I was very surprised because we have so many zine makers and self-publishers here in Jacksonville that they weren't connected with each other in any way, that nobody had gotten together and said, hey, let's all, I don't know, have a day where we go and share or have a reading. Or it just seemed like a lot of people didn't know each other or know the community of self-publishing. And it's so interconnected. I know you were talking about like internationally and nationally. So I think it's important to put us on the map with that too, and have all of those communities kind of come together. Because I know like Sequential Art Workshop is going to come up from Gainesville and other people from North Carolina. And I just think that's really cool to have all of us kind of in one place.
Yeah. Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
Have you seen the creative community in Jacksonville grow like over the past 7 years since you first started?
Absolutely. For me, absolutely, it really has. It's, first of all, it was just generated interest. Like, oh, what is this? People that knew what zines are or didn't, they wanted to know what it was. Then they wanted to make one themselves. And then they became interested in the zine catalog here. And zines are, it's labyrinthian almost. There's no end. There's different branches you go off into, endless subjects, endless formats, endless content. And so that there's interest for everybody, to spark anybody's imagination. So yeah, it's just only grown. That's one reason why, it's, Dan moving here has been so important for what I'm doing, because I can talk to people face to face, but Dan has more of a worldly vision to make it something bigger and more accessible. And so the people who are interested, we're hoping that if, they'll come to DCAZ and check it out. And if they don't, or if they're not able to, or if they're out of town or they're too shy, then we're hoping that this is just the inaugural one, and that we're going to have many, many more of them. So I think Tallahassee is on their 9th year. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be an ongoing thing. So we're just right now getting it off the ground. So, the interest has generated underground that I've seen. So now we're hoping to, have the seeds take root and sprout.
Yeah. You guys both seem so passionate about this. What happened 7 years ago to spark your passion into zines and comics?
Going back to what I was saying about resources, I didn't have many. I didn't have much resources, but it was just, my zine is based on people's stories about their experiences in Jacksonville. So people would just start talking to me about stories, and it was just something that I would go to sleep thinking about it. I would wake up thinking about it. It was just always there. And I was living, my roommates were a couple of artists at the time, musicians and visual artists. And so we would all just sit in the apartment, and, we didn't have TV or the internet or anything. So we would just use what we had around the apartment, and they were creating. And then it sparked me to start creating. And the stories that people were telling me, those naturally went on to what I was creating.
I love that.
So when I was starting to put out this one first zine, that generated interest, and then people would find me and tell me their stories. And then even just in casual conversation, people who didn't want to submit any stories necessarily would tell me about how they related to the stories and say things to me like, oh, well, I have a story, but it's not good enough to go in the zine. And I would have to tell them, anything that you're telling me that's a true story, that is an experience that happened to you, is good enough to go into the zine. And so that started making people see their own worth, I guess. I mean, I don't want to, maybe it's not that important or intense, I don't know, but that's the reason why, what kept me going. And what kept me doing it and making zines was the interest that what people were having within themselves, reasons for feeling what they were feeling, or their experiences, or how they responded to it.
For me, I started making zines because it came out of a place of necessity. Prior to drawing and making zines and drawing comics, I had been a musician, but I would play other people's songs, and that was a comfortable place for me. And of course, I wrote songs, but as far as like performing, it's not something that I want to do or feel comfortable doing. But with zines and comics, I'm able to write them down, share that, be creatively me, and connect with other people in that way, but in booklet form, not in a way where I'm standing in front of somebody extremely vulnerable, still being vulnerable with zines and things like that. And then also with comics, I think it just depicts emotions in a way that, I don't know. That's just like how I like to see emotions on paper and draw them. Like I have a zine about PTSD and disassociation, and the way that it moves and how you can see someone coming out of their body and experiencing anxiety in that way, I think is quite beautiful. So that's why it's important to me. A lot of mine are based on mental health, and people really connect with them. And I can stand there at the table and talk to somebody about like their diagnosis, or what setting boundaries was like for them, or getting that diagnosis, or I don't know. Things like that are just really important to me. So being able to empower other people to share their stories, they're very personal and deep stories, and then connect with other people in the community. There's nothing else like that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds really amazing and wonderful. And, we kind of keep using the word comic and zine like interchangeably.
Oh.
Do they sound like, what's the difference to you guys? Is there a difference?
I would say the only difference for me, because I don't consider myself a comic maker, is because I don't have artistic ability to draw or to illustrate the stories that I'm receiving or putting in my zine. It's word-based. So it's word-based. It's writing and editing basically for me, and then pairing that with imagery from local artists or from imagery I get out of, things around my house or things that are found. And you want to speak on the comics since you're the comic guru.
All of mine are in sequential form, so I do illustrate them, but I think comics can also take, like if somebody were to, and they don't want to illustrate, and they were to take pictures and put them in sequential form, then it could still be a comic. I think when we talk about interchangeability when it comes to zines and comics, because a comic is still a zine if it's self-published, right? So I think that's why, to me, they go hand in hand, and so many comic makers go to zine festivals. But they're not separate, but they are. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I think it's a really interesting point. It sounds like, for your own subject matter, it's a lot of nonfiction or creative nonfiction. And I think people kind of associate zines and comics with like hero comics and
Marvel comics.
Yeah, like fiction-based characters and things like that. But I don't know if people realize that zines can really be any subject matter and a lot of, nonfiction, which I think is really interesting. What are some topics that you guys have written about in your own zines?
I've only have one zine, and that's really just the background on people's experiences with love and dating in Jacksonville. But that runs the gamut. So people tell me stories about things, about happy experiences or when they were children and learning about their sexuality and love and things that they're unlearning, funny stories, really sad stories. I mean, just kind of almost everything. So it's really just the first person narrative.
And sorry, really quick. Can people find River City Ranch in our zine collection at the library?
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Can they find it anywhere else?
Usually it's just hand to hand, so I don't have it online. I do tables at events like Trash Panda, at Rain Dogs or other markets around town. But they're very small run. I only print about 100 because zine making is something that I'm passionate about, but I don't make money doing it. So I have to budget to make sure that I have enough money to print or run ads for local businesses that support the zine to have them, but I can't have them on me all the time. But yes, you can get them here at the library. That's probably the easiest way. Or, people can message me, and they've messaged me from all over the world, and I'll send them out that way.
That's so cool. And what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen with breaking into the comic book and zine industry?
Really, I haven't had any challenges because it's just, you just do it. Really, I mean, self-doubt, I would say, would be the biggest obstacle.
Yeah, that's what kept me from making comics for so long. I just felt like I couldn't, or I didn't have the ability to make comics. And then one day, like I said, out of necessity, I was like, I have to get this out, whatever is inside of me right now. And then I just started making them. So yeah, I really do think it's a hindrance in self. And then a lot of the comic system that we have probably doesn't encourage people to just make independent comics. I mean, they do have a lot of festivals now that are doing that, but maybe like the mainstream publishers.
Maybe just lack of knowledge too, because, for example, when we were just speaking about what the difference is between zine and comics were, I said as a zine maker, I'm not a comic maker because I don't draw. And then Dan says, well, I mean, you can take photos and put them in sequential order, and that's a comic. Now, you just now sparked my imagination that I can make a comic. So that's really the hindrance, is not having the knowledge of what you can use or what resources are available to you, or the fact that you have something to say at all.
Mm-hmm. Or not seeing yourself represented, I think what am I trying to say? Not seeing yourself represented in comics, or when you go to like a Comic-Con. I don't think there are a lot of there are more female artists and writers now, but I mean, back in the day, there weren't comics that really touched me or that I wanted to read. And so even when I go into a comic book store in Jacksonville today, I don't see memoir comics. I don't see graphic novels. They're just not there. Like the novel form. Yeah. It's primarily series. And so I can come to the library and get a memoir comic and something where I feel represented, or I see other people represented, or I hear personal stories. And then I realize, oh, that is something that's out there. That's something that I could make myself. I don't know.
Yeah. And that seems like, there's like a beauty in being a self-published or kind of a self-publishing sort of craft. It really, like, the artist has total freedom in what they want to put out there and create.
Yeah, and that's a really important point that you made about not being represented, because that's also why I started my zine, was because people were telling me these stories and they were brand new to me. And I'm thinking, why don't people talk more about their own experiences? Why aren't they more open? And I publish everybody's stories in my zine anonymously. So that gives people more freedom to be honest and open, because we're not quite there yet,
Yeah.
To say things without judgment, either from your family, your friends, or just public, or yourself even. So yeah, that's a really important point, is I didn't see real stories being told or talked about. And that's what started my zine. So that's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to use mostly, I guess my main 2 comics that I made, they're primarily like based in mental health. One is about emotional manipulation. It just kind of breaks it down and brings the reader into kind of like a workbook format too. And so you can gain insight on like abusive relationships. So it's just things that I've learned throughout the years that I wanted to like share with other people, but in a way without psychobabble or any of that bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And where can our listeners find yours?
Also, same. I don't sell them online. I like sell them when I table at other zine festivals.
Yeah, the things that you've created have really changed my life, to be honest. I mean, I know that we spend a lot of time together organizing DCAZ, and I've said that to you a million times, but every time I hear you talking about your works and what you've done, it inspires me to make more, or dive deeper into myself, or encourage other people to dive deeper and see what other people have out there, which is, again, why we're doing DCAZ. So the way that Dawn and I, we only have our zines or our comics at tables, DCAZ is a more central thing. Instead of, here's a market on this date and time. This is a huge festival that we want to have annually for people to be able to come and see these works that you can't get anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, because most zine makers don't really sell them online. You're right. So that was a good question you asked, because we're like, oh, no, we haven't been selling them in any specific place.
I have one in my backpack right now.
Oh, do you? Oh, nice. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll sell them to you in person. Come find us. No, I'm just kidding. Or you can't. Come find us at a table. Yeah.
At DCAZ.
Yes, at DCAZ. Sorry.
So you guys both also have jobs. So how do you have time to do all this?
We are exhausted. Yeah, we do. We work Monday through Friday, the normal 8 to 5 jobs. And then every Monday night, we go straight from our jobs to 5 Points in Riverside. And we do a zine workshop from 7:30 to 9:30 every single Monday.
Is this for anybody that wants to come?
Yep, it's for anybody that wants to come.
Where's it at?
It's at Rain Dogs, which is a venue that is in 5 Points. It's a great place. It's open to any artistic endeavor that you want to create. So on Monday nights, it's turned into us bringing, Dawn and I have put together all of our zine and comic making materials. So pens and scissors and paper and everything that we've collected while we've been creating, and we put it together in a suitcase, and we haul this giant suitcase through Riverside and unload it at Rain Dogs. And anybody that comes up, it's from 7:30 to 9:30, and we're always advertising it on social media so people know when to come and when we'll be available. But people can come and we'll show them how to make a zine. We have a zine library for people who are never been exposed to zines to see what it's about or be inspired with different content and different formats. Then we do bookbinding, and then you can just come and use our pens and pencils and markers and glue sticks or whatever we have and sit alone and create your own thing if you don't want us to bother you, or if you don't need us to tell you how to make a zine.
And I've been printing out people's like one-page zines that we teach them to make there every week because I have free printing resources at my job, so I've been doing that. And I also have a risograph printer, so I'll be holding workshops on the risograph coming up here too. And I hope to have a day prior to the Zine Fest, and I'll announce that on social media, where a lot of the zine makers can get together and we can all just have a day of printing. I think that would be probably really good. And we can, get everything done, staple, bind, and if there's questions, I'll be there.
Yes. Yeah. So we're doing all of these things, plus we're doing meetings with volunteers, and we're holding a raffle for fundraising. So this is our passion. This is what it takes up every second of our day, basically right now. Sometimes we'll speak to each other and we'll say, I need this Monday off. And, we pick it up, we help each other, but I want to use this opportunity to say we have an open call for volunteers. So DCAZ is not until March the 28th. So we have plenty of time, but we absolutely need volunteers if you're interested to help table, or if you're interested to help facilitate workshops, if you have anything that you'd like to say, or just take raffle money, any volunteering that you want to offer, we would be happy to take it.
And where can they reach out? Where can they reach out to you?
They can email us at dcazfest@gmail.com. That's D as in Duval, C as in comic, A as in and, Z as in zine. So dcazfest@gmail.com. We're also under DCAZ Fest at Instagram and Facebook.
Very cool. And is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know?
Please come. Please come to DCAZ. Please come see this library. There's so much that's out there for your resources to spark your interest. Even if you don't want to create anything, please come see what people are creating. These are the people that are in the shadows, that don't have the guidance or the education or the money to be a publisher or something that you would think be self-respecting, but these people work very, very hard. They have a lot of interesting things to say, and so do you.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on Completely Booked today. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Completely Booked this week. We hope you enjoyed hearing Don and Lindsey's stories and are as excited as we are to attend DCAZ.
Be sure to mark your calendar for March 28th from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. and come hang out at the main library to mingle with fellow comic and zine creators. To find out more about DCAZ and about Don and Lindsey's workshops, you can find them on Facebook by searching DCAZ. We'll be sure to link to the event page on our website at jackspubliclibrary.org.
And as always, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Jack's Library for updates on future podcasts and all library happenings.
Until next time, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Gabby. Bye, guys.